from. They're fanatics. They're maniacs. You wear the wrong clothes, the wrong color on the wrong day, and they're ready to execute you. But that is a very comfortable world to just have everything in demons and gods, you see. And now it's being handed out again. Man, I say, is the rational animal, so to speak. He alone can say, I, and can contemplate his own existence and behavior and actively seek to effect change. Animal can't do that. Animal's not thinking about that. They have their own intelligence, though. Don't get me wrong. I'm not denigrating the animal. But we are the only ones who can think about ourselves and think about thought. Now, this capacity is obviously called independence. Have you ever thought about the meaning of that word? But the opposite of that is called collectivism. But this unique capacity of independence is threatening to the establishment, who does not wish man to become aware of the two forms of manipulation which contravene his independent thought and action. As Alan Watts said, the most strongly enforced of all known taboos is the taboo against knowing who and what you really are behind the mask of your apparently separate, independent, and isolated ego. The taboo against knowing who you are? You mean to tell me we're going to reach 25 years of age, voting age, working age, and marriage age, but we don't know who we all are? Wonderful. That's great. And then we turn around wondering why the world is in the state it's in? Marvelous. So we address this problem, that we know that there's untold cruelty from the earliest times. From James Hillman, the Canadian psychologist and friend of Carl Jung, he said that archaeology supports the view that warfare is a development of only the past 10,000 years. Oh, that's a blink of the eye, 10,000 years. Of course, it ties into research of people like myself who are saying, well, we were visited. We were genetically tampered with. And now the psychologists and even some of the scientists are starting to back that up. Because I very much believe that, believe me, these penchants for violence, they're not something that's natural to human beings at all. He goes on to say that, look, the normal round of warfare has been going on as far back as memory stretches. But during the last 5,000 or so years, 14,600 wars have been recorded. There's barely a day off before we're butchering somebody else. Schlein, who's a San Francisco scientist, top of the totem pole, has been looking into the goddess tradition and divination and what it's all about with the feminine concept. Because the old paradigms are simply not working anymore. So scientists are, not because they want to, believe me, it's because they're forced to. He says that Eve's descendants have steadily accumulated the power to destroy each other in an unholy Armageddon, and like sleepwalkers are shuffling towards a planetary ecological disaster. But how could a slight, 5-foot-tall, two-legged animal create such sublimity and then wreak so much havoc in so minuscule an interval of Earth history? As I've always said, the question of evil is one of the most important questions that we could ever ask. It's number one on the list. Erich Fromm, the post-Neo-Freudian, says that the detailed description of the life of primitive hunters and food gatherers has shown that man, at least since he fully emerged 50,000 years ago, was most likely not the brutal, destructive, cruel being, and hence not the prototype of man the killer that we find in more developed stages of his evolution. So there's another lie out the door. Oh, well, we're violent because, that's just the way it is. It's evolution. No, it's not evolution. And that big question that so many people have asked, sitting around the coffee table, but the scientists are asking it. The malcontents are asking it. What is the real difference between man and beast? The only thing I say to that is, do we really want the answer? I mean, really. Because man does differ from the animal by the fact that he is the killer. He, the only primate that kills and tortures members of his own species without any reason, either biological or economic, and who feels satisfaction in doing so. Animals will eat each other, but they don't murder each other. It is this biologically non-adaptive and non-phylogenetically programmed malignant aggression, because there's healthy forms of aggression as well. But this is malignant aggression that constitutes the real problem and danger to man's existence as a species. Don't we know it? Because the most ample, he says, and horrifying documentation for seemingly spontaneous forms of destructiveness are on the record of civilized history. The history of war is a report of ruthless and indiscriminate killing and torture, whose victims are men, women, and children. Many of these occurrences give the impression of orgies of destruction, in which neither conventional nor genuinely moral factors have any inhibitory effect. There is hardly a destructive act human imagination could think of that has not been acted out again and again. Schlein says that creation is in fact a nightmare spectacle taking place on a planet that has been soaked in the blood of all of its creatures. The soberest conclusion that we can make is that this planet is being turned into a vast pit of fertilizer. Actually, it is. And those who have studied the ritualistic component of these killings, the world is still to wake up to that. But there are people who've been studying that. They will understand what that statement in fact does mean. Fromm goes on to say, only man seems to take pleasure in destroying life without any reason or purpose other than that of destroying. Remember Freud? There's two sides. There's the instinct of death and the instinct for life. And we all have it. Even the most creative of people. Van Gogh can go out one day and paint pictures that will stun the world for hundreds of years, and in the same hour cut his own ear off. To put it more generally, only man appears to be destructive beyond the aim of defense or of attaining what he needs. Only man. Thomas Hobbes, and he should know because he's one of the philosophers behind our modern mass murderers, okay? I'll be doing a DVD in the future called Evil's Willing Servants, in which I'll be dealing with these hidden people, the Leo Strausses, the Rothschilds, the Thomas Hobbes types people, some of the people, that they're camera shy. And they're philosophers, they're teachers. And the young men, like the Bushes and the Wolfowitz, they serve these individuals. And they want to get into politics to execute the philosophies of people that you don't know about and are not meant to know about. You've heard of Wilson, but you ain't heard of Colonel Mandel House. So we have to find out who are the architects of deception behind the scenes. Very important. Hobbes says that the state of peace among men living side by side is not a natural state. The natural state is one of war. There are people who believe that. In the French philosopher Joseph de Maistre believed it. He said, I'd say, gentlemen, that dictatorship is a legitimate form of government. Dictatorship, indeed, is part of the divine order. No questions about it. These are the top philosophers of the ages. And we have people executing right now their philosophies. Another psychopath was Juan Donoso Cortez. He says, the culmination of Donoso's philosophical treatise is that the institution of bloody sacrifice is the most universal of all human dogmas and institutions. The most civilized nations and the most savage tribes believe in a pure victim offered as a perfect holocaust. Without the death penalty, without the purifying efficacy of blood, all societal bonds would collapse. So they're saying if you've got civilization, it's based on sacrifice. And there's people who believe that and are operating accordingly right now. Of course, it won't matter to you until your daughter or son goes missing. Then it'll matter. And coming more to the point, we have something important that's going to happen this year. We're talking about Mayan countdowns, and 13-year cycles, and age of revealing, and all of that. Well, listen. If you haven't felt it before, it's going to start happening soon. In November of this year, and for the whole of 2007, all the way up to 2012, there's a very major cycle that's going to begin. We've been talking about time and cycle and all of that. Well, there's another cycle you need to know about that's approaching us very, very soon. And it's the coming in of the planet Pluto. Now, I wish I could get more into the concept that when I'm talking about the planets, I'm not talking about the effects of rocks in space with magic rays. People who know my work on astrology know that I know about an inner zodiac. The whole idea is that these rocks in space just represent energies. They are not the thing itself. So don't get me wrong there. But Pluto is an archetype that represents a certain kind of energy that is actually psychological in nature. That's all I can say for now. People can contact me and we can go into greater depth. There's information on the Taroscope's website more about what I mean by these planets and zodiacs. Anyway, we have the planet Pluto. But what is Pluto? What does it matter that it's coming in? Because in November of this year, it's going to be crossing galactic center and channeling energy from the center of the galaxy. And that's in late Sagittarius. Pluto, the planet of destruction, and I prefer the word deconstruction, because really, if you think about it, nothing is ever destroyed. It's just transmuted. And radical change will be crossing galactic center and channeling that energy of the central sun in early 2007. It takes approximately 250 years for Pluto to complete one circuit of the zodiac, or 12 signs. We saw the 12 signs. Well, now think of one planet moving very, very slowly. Because the sun and Mercury and Venus and some of the other planets we know, they move very, very quickly. And their effects then are very, very sort of short-lived. Even though if you're sensitive, you can always feel them. That's what astrology is all about, is the mapping and charting of the effects of these bodies. But Pluto moves very slowly and has very, very dramatic effect. Now, Pluto is presently approximately 24 degrees of Sagittarius. Please excuse me if you're not familiar with this astrological jargon. And when it moves into Capricorn, the sign of order and government, Capricorn, right, the sign of order and government,